salty tang of the ocean air, a scent forever interwoven with his deepest memories, pulled Elias back to the beach. 5 years. 5 years since Seraphina had vanished, leaving behind a silence that echoed louder than any sound. Every wave that unfurled on the shore seemed to whisper her name, and the driftwood, weathered and silvered by time, still held the faint imprint of their intertwined initials. Elias ran a hand over the rough wood, his fingers tracing the E and S that were now almost swallowed by the elements. A ghost of a smile touched his lips as he remembered the innocent joy of carving those letters. A moment so pure it almost hurt, now tainted by the ache of her absence and the sting of her parting words. He remembered the first time he'd seen her, a sun-kissed apparition laughing as she chased a retreating wave, her long hair catching the light like spun gold. The memory was vibrant, a flash of pure happiness. Yet it was immediately followed by the hollow echo of knowing that laughter had been stolen from his life. Their impromptu sandcastle architecture, grand and gloriously doomed, always ended with her triumphant splash. He could still feel the warmth of her hand in his as they walked this very stretch of sand, talking about everything and nothing. The phantom warmth was a constant reminder of what he'd lost. He remembered her boundless curiosity, her bright, intelligent eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, and the way she'd tilt her head slightly when she was deep in thought. These were the details that haunted him, the beautiful fragments that made the pain of her absence so sharp. He recalled one particular afternoon, a spontaneous adventure where they'd found a hidden tide pool, teeming with tiny crabs and iridescent shells. Seraphina, with her endless fascination for the natural world, had spent hours pointing out every small wonder, her voice filled with infectious delight. He'd simply sat and watched her, captivated not just by the beauty of the tide pool, but by the sheer joy radiating from her. He'd realized then, with a startling clarity, how deeply he cherished those moments of shared discovery. That vivid memory was a double-edged sword, a testament to profound happiness, but also a stark reminder of the depth of the cut when it was all abruptly taken away. Then came the hurried goodbye, not with a word in person, but with a letter. It arrived a few days after her sudden, unexplained absence slipped under his door. He'd driven by her apartment building, only to see a sold sign hammered into the lawn. She simply wasn't in the city anymore. It was from Seraphina, her familiar, elegant handwriting on the envelope. But the words inside were a jarring contradiction to her usual warmth. Elias, the letter read, brief and stark. I'm leaving. Please don't try to find me. There's a good reason for this, one I can't explain. Please forget me. Forget me. The words were etched into his mind, a constant burning brand. How could he forget the sun, the moon, the very air he breathed? That cold directive, devoid of any warmth or explanation, felt like a betrayal that warred with every cherished memory. He tried to call, but her number was disconnected. He reached out to mutual friends, but they had no answers, only confusion. The silence that followed was deafening, a deep, aching void where she used to be. He'd scoured news articles, hoping for a hint, but found nothing concrete, only the gnawing uncertainty that intertwined with the beautiful memories, turning them bittersweet. Yet he returned here, annually, on the anniversary of her disappearance, driven by a stubborn, irrational hope, clinging to the belief that there had to be more to it. He'd stand where they'd stood, throw pebbles into the surf where they'd laughed, and sometimes he'd even talk to the wind, as if his words might somehow reach her. This year, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Elias saw a figure by their gnarled driftwood. His heart, a dormant ember for so long, flickered with a desperate, familiar hope. The way she stood, the slight tilt of her head as she gazed at the sea. It couldn't be. His breath hitched, a familiar blend of longing and pain seizing him. He started walking, slowly at first, then faster, the sand pulling at his feet, his mind racing through possibilities and fears. It was her, the same graceful posture, the familiar silhouette, a little older perhaps, but unmistakably Seraphina. She turned as if sensing his presence, and her eyes, still the deep, stormy ocean he remembered, met his. There was a gasp, a silent recognition that spanned years of longing, unanswered prayers, and profound hurt. "Elias," she whispered, her voice a melody he hadn't heard in an eternity. "Seraphina?" he breathed, the name a sacred utterance, laced with 5 years of aching questions. The space between them, once an insurmountable chasm, began to shrink with every hesitant, then urgent step. They met in the middle, a rush of bodies colliding, hands grasping, arms wrapping around each other. The embrace was tight, desperate, filled with years of unspoken words, the beautiful memories, the crushing pain of her absence, and the lingering sting of that inexplicable letter. When they finally pulled apart, tears streamed down Seraphina's face. "I am so sorry, Elias," she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have found a way to tell you." They sat on the sand, the waves washing over their feet, as she finally explained everything. Her family, old money with deep-rooted traditions and a strict sense of propriety, had always disapproved of their relationship. They saw Elias as an unsuitable match, lacking the proper background and connections. When they realized how serious Seraphina was about him, they had given her an ultimatum. They had orchestrated her disappearance, arranging for her to sell her apartment and move abroad under the guise of an extended family trip. They threatened to cut her off entirely and disinherit her if she didn't comply. They believed love was a fleeting emotion and that if Elias truly loved her, he would wait. 5 years was their arbitrary test, a cruel gauntlet to prove his devotion. They had meticulously cut off all her avenues of communication, monitoring her every move, making it impossible for her to reach out without severe repercussions for her and those she cared about. The letter she'd sent had been a desperate compromise, written under duress, the only way she could try to protect him without revealing the full, dangerous truth of her situation. She had tried to make it cold enough, distant enough, that he would let go, believing it was the only way to shield him. Elias listened, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within him, anger at her family's manipulative cruelty, profound relief at her presence, and an overwhelming surge of love for her resilience. He remembered the cold, formal letter, the brick wall he'd hit every time he tried to find her. Now the agony of those words, "forget me," made a terrible, heartbreaking sense, no less painful, but now imbued with a tragic understanding. He thought of his own stubborn hope, the silent vigil he'd kept on this beach, fueled by an instinct that their connection was too strong to simply vanish. He had waited, not out of a test, but out of an unshakable belief in what they had, a belief that had warred daily with the pain of her silence. When she finished, her voice raw with the burden of her confession, Elias took her hands in his. "They were wrong," he said, his voice firm, his thumb tracing patterns on her skin. "They tested my patience, but they couldn't break what we had. The pain of not having you, of that letter, it nearly broke me. But I waited, Seraphina. I always believed there was a reason beyond what I saw." The moon began its ascent, casting a silver path across the ocean. They sat there for a long time, hands intertwined, the silence between them no longer a chasm of unanswered questions, but a comforting presence, filled with the promise of a future reclaimed. The storm of their past had finally broken, and on their beach, under the vast, forgiving sky, they had found their way back to each other, scarred but stronger and more certain than ever before. Thanks for tuning in. We poured our hearts into this story and would love to hear what you thought. Share your comments below. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you next time.